Hello, this is the third of my video blogs. I don't think it actually has a name yet, so I'm gonna, just on a whim, I'm gonna call it Cross-Vlog, because everything else I've invented, has Cross-Robot in the name somewhere, so this is gonna be Cross-Vlog. Now, jumping straight into it, I keep going on about Benedict Cumberbatch's face. I've done it in 2 videos now, and in the review I'm going to do in a few minutes about 12 Years a Slave, he's going to pop up again. So, in that film, I managed to sneak peek at his face in profile, if that's the right term. It's when his face is like this. Don't look at mine, it's a really weird shape. And I figured out what's wrong. In profile, I've kind of drawn an outline, it doesn't seem right, but in profile, he kind of looks like a teapot without the spout, because his nose kind of points up like a who nose. I've drawn the thing. I've actually traced that from an image on Google, and you can. That is actually. I haven't drawn his beautiful curly locks because that would take too much time and effort. But this definitely is his outline, and he kind of looks like an old man there. But I'm pretty sure in the movies and on TV he's a lot thinner than that, and that's why I think his head looks weird. From the front, it looks fine. From the side, that's where he looks weird. And I'm going to leave it at that. I used my trusty Star Wars drawing book for that there. You might see a couple more images in there eventually, but at the minute that's the first image in there. Benedict Cumberbatch's face is the first image in my book. 12 Years a Slave. I couldn't help but compare it to... You've noticed I'm wiggling a pen around. It's because I've got something to play with now. I couldn't help but compare it to Django Unchained and Lincoln. The only reason is, it's because it's centered around slavery, similar to those other 2 films, even though all 3 films are completely separate. I know there's nothing to do with each other. What I actually did with this film was I didn't look into it, I didn't have a look, see who was in it, I hadn't actually seen a poster until I went into the cinema and watched the film with my girlfriend. And I didn't know. I got pleasant surprises all the way through the film, because I didn't know that Benedict Cumberbatch was going to be in it, I didn't know Michael Fassbender was going to be in it, and I didn't know Brad Pitt was going to be in it. If anyone hasn't seen it, I'm going to tell you any spoilers anyway, so if you don't want to hear spoilers, mute me or turn me off now. But it's one of these things where you kind of go, oh, there's Benedict Cumberbatch, and he's there, and he puts on quite a good American accent, to be fair to him. It's a Southern American accent. Now, I've done the voice when I was practicing my voices off camera. If I do it now, it's going to sound really stupid, so I'm not going to. He plays a southern slave owner on a cotton plantation, if I remember. I can't remember which he goes to that many plantations, I can never remember which one he's at. And he is by far this is a word that's going to sound weird, but he's the nicest slave owner. It's a weird thing I have to say. I didn't actually think I was going to say it until I started saying it. But yeah, like I said, I'm going to give you spoilers. And what happens, basically the start of the story is this gentleman called Solomon, whose last name escapes me, whose wife goes away with their kids for a tradition. I can't remember exactly what it is. It's cooking for someone, but I can't remember what it is. Unfortunately, I watched it at the weekend because I was up in Newcastle upon Tyne, and now I've come back home, and it's now Monday, and I have forgotten some of the details of the film. And basically, his wife goes away, and what happens is he's left alone by himself for 2 weeks. And in the first week, he goes off with 2 guys who claim to give him fortune, and, well, not fortune as much, but as a good payday. Because he's a fiddler, he plays the violin quite well, and he goes off, and they basically spike his drink. They roofie him, and he wakes up in a cage, well, not a prison, in someone's basement in Washington, D.C., and it kind of escalates from there. He gets sold into slavery, and gets floated down the river, gets a lot of talk about how he could either stay quiet and keep his head down and stay alive, or fight and die young, which I liked a lot. I liked the contrast between what their only 2 options were, was either be a slave or die trying to escape. After that, we get to meet Benedict Cumberbatch. What happens is he's in a slave auction. Not that I've ever imagined slave auctions, but this slave auction was kind of just in a house. I was expecting kind of like a bull auction, because they treat them like animals. So I assumed that they'd be like a bull auction, a big pen with the guys in the middle and everyone saying bid, 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 bid. But it wasn't. They were just in a room, they were naked, and they were getting inspected by Benedict Cumberbatch and other prospective slave owners. And what happened was Benedict Cumberbatch decided that he wanted Solomon, whose name was now Platt, because that's his now slave name, and this other woman, who, I'll say it, she annoyed me. Her lines were far too Shakespearean. Everyone else's seemed to be right. You'd listen to it and go, yeah, I could kind of imagine I think it was 1846 time saying this. But this woman, she sounded far too theatrical for what she was. Because basically she was separated from her kids and she was sad and crying constantly. And then she just went straight into a King Lear speech. And I was like, no, that kind of, no. I didn't like that. But then Benedict Cumberbatch comes along and basically helps, well, not helps him, he's still a slave, makes him a better slave. Easiest way to describe it, makes him a better slave. And Solomon and him get along quite well. Until the guy who is the lead in the film Ruby Sparks, who I've said this before, I'm terrible with names. I just know films and names of people in films. But the guy who plays the lead in Ruby Sparks comes along and basically hates Solomon / Platt's guts. And then, so I'm going to start calling him Platt because it's the right time of the film. Platt starts basically fighting back and ends up really pissing off Ruby Sparks' man. So Benedict Cumberbatch has to give him away to Michael Fassbender. And Michael Fassbender's beard is amazing. All I could think is, how come his mustache reaches down the sides ever so neatly and mine just kind of fall on my face like I've got a bulldog's mustache? You see it? You see? Yeah. Michael Fassbender, a Irish / German actor, and he plays a drunk. I found that a little amusing that an Irish / German actor is playing a drunk. He's a drunken slave owner who is married to a woman who is she's a fairly famous actress, but I can't remember what I've seen her in. And he falls in love with a slave who's a very, very good slave, and it pleases him greatly to abuse this poor girl. But yeah, I'm getting off topic. Like I said, Michael Fassbender, very, very, very good. And in that one, I remember that they have to pick cotton, and Platt's not very good at it. So, what happens is he it seems like he gets left to do his own thing. Every now and then you see him picking cotton, and then most of the time it's they show you what happens on the Sundays, on the Sabbath days, where the slaves mercifully don't have to work. So he's just kind of wandering around the plantation every now and then. Sometimes he walks off the plantation to do chores, and he always gets caught by the people who hunt down slaves that run away, and he gets taken. He gets told to go back. Basically, he doesn't get beaten up by them a lot. He gets whipped. He gets kicked the shit out of quite a lot, actually, the poor fella. So what happens after that is there's a plague of caterpillars come and eat the cotton, and he gets taken to another plantation for a couple of years, and he works there for a bit, which annoys me a little bit because it's obviously you get to know the time frame because it's called 12 Years a Slave, and it's obviously the film is taking 12 years. But you don't know how long he stays at each plantation, and you don't know sort of the time frame that he's in. You know, it just starts from, I think it was 1846, and then 12 years later. But you don't know where he is in between in the little timeline. But after the apocalyptic cotton crop harvest failure comes along, it ends, and he goes back to the cotton plantation, where Michael Fassbender, still a drunk, hasn't changed in the 2-3 years that they've been away, still a drunk, basically hates Solomon's guts because Solomon is a very, very, very clever guy, and he has to try and hide it. Otherwise, once they realise he can read and write, he's basically done for because they know he's really clever and they'll beat the crap out of him and probably kill him. But after that, he starts working on the cotton plantation again, and just as random, really, Brad Pitt pops up. Yeah, I just kind of went, that Brad Pitt? What? Yeah, that's Brad Pitt. All right, that's Brad Pitt. And he has a brilliant beard. Michael Fassbender's beard was great, but Brad Pitt's beard is Amish brilliant. He doesn't have a big Amish beard, but he has a very square Amish beard. I can't mimic it. Basically, it goes lines, 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 and it's perfectly straight. He's got a perfectly square head. And all I could think when I was watching the film is, doesn't he look lovely? I was looking up at the screen going, oh, look at Brad Pitt. Isn't he lovely? Because he's playing basically the good guy. He's playing a Canadian, actually, and he hates slavery and everything about it. But he's been employed by Michael Fassbender as a carpenter, and he's having a word with Solomon/Platt because he's worked in carpentry as well. And they basically, Solomon tells Brad Pitt his entire story, and Brad Pitt decides, out of the goodness of Brad Pitt's lovely, lovely heart, that he's going to help him. And that basically wraps up the film. Brad Pitt helps, and all the good things start happening, and happily ever after, that kind of stuff. But what happens in between is the good bit. Once Brad Pitt's entered, you can basically go happy ever after, and then you don't have to worry too much about it. But yeah, all I could think about is, because Solomon/Platt could read and write, but he didn't have my trusty clicky top pen, and he didn't have any paper. He managed to squirrel away some paper over the years, and because he was picking sugar at one point, he managed to get a little bit of wood that he sharpened into a sugarcane style pen. And for about half an hour of the film, you see him trying to make ink. He uses berry juices, he boils sticks, and he's there trying to write by candlelight. And I stopped at that point and thought, he's got a candle, he's got a bit of wood and some paper. Why doesn't he use charcoal? It was bugging me for about half an hour. I was looking at him trying to write this thing with berry juice with his improvised pen, thinking, burn your pen and you've got bloody charcoal. Why don't you just use that? But that's beside the point. The film, yes, very, very, very good. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10, just because of the little niggly things, and because the kind of, once Brad Pitt enters and he says, I will help you, sir. That's not Brad Pitt's voice in that, but he goes, I will help you, sir. You kind of just, it's the last, say, 25 minutes, 20 minutes of the film. You can just kind of sit back and go, yeah, all the good things are happening now. The end. And it's that sort of ending where it's a happily ever after, and you kind of hope it is, but it's not about the happily ever after. It's about the story of getting to the happily ever after. That's really good. So it's going to be a 7 out of 10, and that's going to be the end of my review. Leave me a comment down below, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Bye bye.